Whatever you believe about politics, whether you're on the left, the right, or somewhere in between, your ideas didn't just pop into your head. They're actually part of this huge story, one that's been unfolding for more than 2,000 years. And today, we're going to trace that story all the way back to the beginning. So, to get started, I've got a few quick questions for you. First one, is government just something we have to put up with to keep things from falling apart? Okay, how about this one? Should the smartest, most qualified people be in charge? Does being an expert give you the right to rule? And the last one, what is freedom, really? Is it just being left alone to do what you want? Or is it something more? Go ahead and hang on to those answers. See, the reason I ask is that your gut reaction to those questions, well, it lands you right in the middle of a debate that started all the way back in ancient Greece. So let's go back and see how it all started. Now, digging into these old ideas isn't just some boring academic exercise. It helps us uncover our own unwritten philosophy. These are the assumptions about politics that are buried so deep in our culture, we don't even see them anymore. They feel like common sense, but as we're about to find out, they are anything but universal. And that's really what political theory is all about. It's just this long, ongoing conversation where humanity tries to answer the most basic questions. How are we all supposed to live together? And what is the whole point of government anyway? Our first stop is ancient Athens, and we're talking about Plato. And right away, we have to just throw our modern ideas out the window. For Plato, justice had absolutely nothing to do with individual rights or equality. It was something totally different. This right here gets to the absolute core of what Plato was trying to do. He believed the government's main job wasn't just to make laws, but to actually mold the souls of its citizens, to teach them what to want so they would naturally desire what was good for the entire community. So how do you think you could do that? Well, Plato said a city has to be a mirror of the human soul. He saw the soul as having three parts: our reason, our spirit, which is like ambition, and our basic appetites. So a just city needed three classes to match: the rational rulers, the spirited guardians or soldiers, and the appetitive producers, the farmers and craftsmen. For Plato, justice was simple. When each group does its own job and only its own job, it's a city built on pure specialization. And who gets to be in charge of all this? The philosophers, of course. This is where we get Plato's famous philosopher kings. They had the right to rule because they were the only ones who went through decades of intense training to understand the form of the good, this ultimate unchanging truth about how reality works. That knowledge made them uniquely qualified to design the perfect society. And to protect this perfect city, Plato was for some things that, well, we would find pretty shocking today. The rulers would tell a noble lie, saying people were born with gold, silver, or bronze in their souls to justify the whole class system. The rulers themselves weren't allowed to own private property so they wouldn't get corrupt, and all art and music would be strictly censored to make sure it only encouraged good behavior. Okay, let's fast forward a few centuries and head over to Rome, where a completely different idea was taking shape. The Romans, they weren't obsessed with a perfect city designed by geniuses. They were obsessed with liberty and law. But here's the thing, the Roman idea of freedom, what they called libertas, was not like ours. For a Roman, to be free meant one thing: you were not a slave. It meant you were ruled by stable, predictable laws, not by the random whims of a master or a tyrant. It was freedom from domination, not necessarily freedom to do whatever you want. This whole idea was captured in their concept of the res publica, which literally means the people's thing, or the public's property. The idea was that the state wasn't the private possession of a king. It belonged to all citizens, and its whole purpose was to serve the common good. So how did they protect this people's thing? With a brilliant mixed constitution that balanced the power of the one, the few, and the many. You had the two consuls who acted like kings. Then you had the elite senate handling the money. And then you had the popular assemblies, which elected officials and passed laws. Each part needed the others to get anything done, creating this amazing system of checks and balances. Now, after Rome falls, Europe enters a totally new era, and the entire framework for thinking about politics changes again. For the next 1,000 years, every single political question is going to be seen through one single, all-powerful lens: Christian theology. In medieval Europe, you just couldn't separate politics from religion. It was impossible. They were two sides of the same coin. The big questions weren't about the ideal city or the lawful republic anymore. Now it was all about God's plan for humanity. A really key idea here is that they didn't think in terms of church and state as separate things. For them, society was one unified body called Christendom. It just had two different functions, a spiritual one led by the Pope and an earthly one led by kings and emperors. And this one verse from St. Paul, it became one of the most influential political statements in all of history. The logic was simple. All earthly authority, from the lowest baron to the highest king, only exists because God allows it to exist. So if you resist your ruler, you're actually resisting God's plan. The whole purpose of government was just to keep order in a fallen, sinful world. Okay, so we've just done a whirlwind tour of nearly 2,000 years. So why does any of this matter? Because by seeing just how different these other worlds were, we can finally start to see the hidden architecture of our own. Just think about the ideas that were totally missing for them. The concept of the individual who has natural rights even before they join society? Nope. The idea of the state as a neutral machine separate from the ruler? Didn't exist. And the idea that a government gets its power from the consent of the governed? That wasn't even on their radar. Our entire political vocabulary is incredibly modern. What we've seen are three profoundly different ways of seeing the world. Each one had its own logic, its own definition of justice, and its own idea about what politics is even for. So let's recap these three completely different worlds. For Plato, politics was this top-down project to craft people's souls and build a perfect, harmonious city. For Cicero and the Romans, it was all about protecting the shared republic through a balance of power and the rule of law. And for the early medieval world, politics was simply a tool given by God to keep sinful humanity in check until the world ended. Seeing how radically these fundamental ideas have changed over time, it really forces us to ask a final question. Our own political beliefs, the ones that feel so natural, so self-evident to us, they're just one more step in this long story. So knowing that, what part of our unwritten philosophy, what fundamental assumption that we all share today, is worth taking a second look at?